Hey, what's up?
What up? How's it going?
Pretty good. I see that one of our guests has arrived, so we see you.
Yay!
What's up? What's up? Hey, Nex. Hey, Cody. How you guys doing?
Hey, Cody, thanks for joining us.
Let me ask y'all a question. Now, we only got 2 people in the room right now, but that's okay. That's enough people to answer the question. You
Yeah.
guys can think. Maybe I'll put a poll in the. I think there's a new feature from Spotify so we use Anchor to post to the other podcasts. And I think there's this new feature where you can like ask a question. So here's the question that I might pose to our Spotify listeners and anybody that comes on here while we're live to answer. Here it is. You and your significant other are on a hike. You like hiking. You enjoy each other's company on a nice nature hike. It's beautiful. You notice that there's wild animal scat on the ground, but that's normal because wild animals live in the woods, for those of you who don't know. Somebody might not know that. I don't know. You come around the corner. There's a bear. Your significant other turns around, fucking takes off, takes the dog. Are y'all still in a relationship?
So no word, just turns tail and runs. Doesn't say anything.
Takes off.
Take off, like run with me, like nothing.
Yeah.
No.
Bat out of hell. Just took off.
Just self-preservation, 100%.
When the person who's writing the story returns to the car, their significant other apologizes and says, "I was scared." But like, you left me to die.
I mean, I don't know. I remember going on a hike. I was one of my first 14ers, and the guy that I was dating at the time, it was a whole group of us, and I'm a slow hiker. I'm a slow and steady. So I'll make it. I'm just going to get there way behind you. I stop, I take pictures, I stop for everybody else so I can take a breather. I'll get there. So, and he was just a, nose to the ground, hike up the, get to the summit.
Right.
So he arrives to the summit of this 14 or probably like 15 minutes ahead of me. Wasn't even that long. And there were people up at the top that gave him a hard time, like strangers, straight up strangers. They're like,
"You left her?"
You left her? And so when I get to the top, they're like, "How do you feel about him leaving you?" And I was like, "Whoa." I was like, well, we have a whole group of us. And, I was like,
fine.
I honestly don't care, as long as, I'm like, we were all in a group. If we were, it was just he and I, no, I'd be pissed because there's the whole idea of like, what if I fall and break my ankle, or what if I,
safety first.
Partner.
So I didn't say, I'm not mentioning genders because I don't want there to be any bias or anything.
Yeah, no, it could be either way. Yeah.
Would you feel differently if the significant other that left is a male versus the significant other that left being a female? That's a good question.
I mean, even just the like bear and turn and run. That's something.
But one time,
something that says like, I'm not just,
That reminds me that I was in a car accident one time because the only thing that I could utter, the only words that could come out of my mouth in the passenger seat were dear, dear, dear. And he thought I was trying to be like, dear. Like, when have I ever called you that? First of all, I've never in my life called you dear. We had been together for a minute, me and that guy, and so he hit that deer. We had a car accident.
We hit that deer. No.
So female, no problem. Male with no words, never. I think that's a bias. I think that if you're with somebody, like, listen, danger is danger. But in our society, I will say it is a little emasculating. When it sounds more emasculating when a man does it. Like the man is, but that's society. Society told you the man was supposed to do that. And they also told women to shut their fucking mouths. We don't do that. So
as a human, human decency and friend to friend. So say you're just, like gender aside, you gonna push your friend at that bear? You gonna just run? You gonna yeah. I think I would probably have to take a picture first and then run.
Yeah, because I mean, bear, just take off. I mean, the first rule of seeing a bear is to run faster than everybody else. Just hightail it. I don't know if you're still in a relationship after that. So yeah. Do you hold? I think too. Like the societal bias is it's fucking. It makes a difference. I think. I don't want it to. I want to be as much of an asshole as a man would be considered if I turned and hightailed it out. I want to be treated equally. Damn it! I want to be an asshole too.
I think your spouse that got left behind would be like, you're an asshole for leaving me behind. So due diligence. Yeah, like I don't think there's a.
Yeah, like didn't even say anything. So next says grab the shirt and haul ass. Just like grab their shirt and be like, come on.
Something that says I'm taking like we're running together, like definitely not like leaving you
just leave me there. So okay, it was a man who did this to his girlfriend, left her just standing there. His running off and taking the dog with him spooked the bear. So the bear took off too. So she was safe. And she took her time getting back down the mountain. She said when she got back, this is a Reddit. Somebody teach me how to use Reddit because I only read them on Facebook. And I think I would enjoy it more if I knew how to work the whole thing. Anyways, she said when she got back to the car, he was crying because he didn't know if she was going to make it or not. He took the dog, not the girl. Yeah. Well,
if he's holding the leash, I mean, that makes sense,
In fairness, I'm going to be real honest with you guys. I'm taking the dog first.
Yeah, she's attached. They're attached to me. Like that is.
And also, there's a high likelihood that I love my dogs more than I love actual human beings. And okay, listen, I'm sorry to make you wait. We do, our guest is, one of our guests is in the waiting room right now. Actually, might bring you in after I bring up this next topic, but it has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about. Said, sorry, the dog is bait. Oh, not in my world. I am a white woman. The dog goes with me. The dog.
Before we get started, let's just do a few little announcements. We are the Cannabis Closet.
Oh, yeah.
Jay. I don't know. We've got some work intros and stuff that we're working on, but basically the views and opinions expressed throughout our show may or may not be opinions of the hosts ourselves. So
you guys are going to know what our opinions are.
Please, yes, come in, comment. We're here for all of the whether you agree, don't agree, and just be kind. We're here to be nice. We're here to educate each other and talk about things that matter to us. So, but please continue on in the comments. We love the participation, and so. Article that we had a topic. It was a couple.
I want to talk about that thing that made me mad this morning.
Yeah, it goes along. It's a little bit of a follow up, or not a follow up per se, but an example of what is going on in the industry or the medical industry. And we did that show on CHS, cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, and today, Queen read an article and it got her heated. And tell us about that article breakdown and what the Frank
first of all, it's well known that cannabis has caused 0 deaths from cannabis consumption alone. It's well known. It's well researched. There are things that have not been researched. That is not one of those things. Okay. First of all. And second, no, that's a lie, because the things that have not been researched are the things that have not been discovered in other parts of the world, because cannabis has been very thoroughly researched in other parts of the world. Y'all, the United States is not the only continent on this planet that has cannabis or that can research and has smart people and like people with fucking brains and shit. Okay. So so that said, what really irritates me, I can pull the article up so that I can tell you where the source is. I'm packing a blunt right now. I can pull it up. I don't care about the legitimacy of this source. The information that the source is providing is wrong based on one thing that never happens when doctors who don't get any training or understanding of cannabis to get their medical degree at all, like less than 4% of the curriculum, and it's based a lot in stigma, are diagnosing CHS on the mere mention of consuming cannabis, on the mere mention of it, without doing their due diligence, which is what? You should test the product that this person has consumed that is causing these symptoms to make sure that your diagnosis is correct, especially if there is an uptick of people coming into the emergency room with such symptoms. We need to know why it's happening. And so this story was the most severe of any that I've ever read. This story claims that a child, 17, 18-year-old boy, died from kidney failure because of cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. What?
Yeah.
A child.
The second time he was admitted, right?
Who used cannabis, openly admitted using cannabis in a non-legal state. Can somebody please explain to me why this product wasn't tested, or that they didn't try to get a hold of this product to get it tested? When he stopped using cannabis, his symptoms didn't just go away. He continued to get worse. His kidneys started to fail, and he ended up dying, according to this story. I don't even know if these are real people. The point is, somebody's going to read that and think these are real people if they're not. And if they are, they're going to think that cannabis caused this little boy's death, and it didn't. I'm sorry, it didn't. Where did he get the cannabis? What did it have in it? Because cannabis doesn't cause that.
And at 17, when they're saying it's a chronic user syndrome, and if at 17, how chronic of a user can
how chronic? He didn't even use it that often. This is Dennis,
Mushroom Dennis. Yeah, I was like, let's go ahead and bring him on in.
Yeah, he's been sitting there long enough. Hey. And he knows he's well versed in cannabis too. So I was like, come in for this conversation too. He's here to talk about mushrooms, but we're going to talk about this first because it just infuriates me when these stories come out. Just and I feel like it's always around this time of year when the stories about, oh, be careful, your kids are going to get edibles.
For Halloween.
Those stories come out. and then the CHS stories come out. And like they had this kid on pharmaceuticals to prevent the vomiting and all kinds of other things. I mean, we can link the story in the comments here. But yeah, like there's no mention of anybody testing the product that this child consumed. The first doctor heard the word cannabis and automatically diagnosed this as the problem. The second doctor heard that the first doctor diagnosed it as CHS and went ahead and agreed with it. Not a single one of them said, hey, can we look at what your child is consuming and see? When was the last time your child consumed cannabis? How often does this happen? You know?
Where are they getting?
Where'd you get it from?
Where was this article at?
It is. So first of all, that was what was disappointing for me too, it was on Facebook. Okay, I apologize for that.
Because England comes out a lot with like that sort of crap. I've seen a
Okay.
lot of like
Just
sort of
pull
crap
it up.
like that come out of England for some apparent reason.
But there was a person in your comments, Queen, that was saying they
Friend of
went
mine.
in with internal bleeding, and they wanted to throw CHS diagnosis at her, and her husband took her and left and went to another hospital where she was diagnosed properly, and they were able to save her life.
Yes.
Um,
And had she gone with that original diagnosis, as these people did, if this is a real true story, then she wouldn't be here. She wouldn't be able to tell us about that.
Right.
This story was posted on a page that I follow called the Cannabis Community. So I was disappointed in that alone. And then the story was posted by medicalnewstoday.com, which probably not a super reliable source to get information like this. Is probably not even, they don't have any good sourcing or medical journal stuff like
I
that,
I think it depends on
But
the
people,
article, because I have one pulled up
people,
on it.
but people see the words medical news today, and then it's just automatic, right? This is like seeing that white coat. It's automatic that we can trust this, because why would they say anything that we can't believe, right? But then this whole article is just like telling us how bad this little boy's symptoms got, and nobody thought that it could be something other than cannabis. They automatically just threw it on there in a non-legal state, of course, right? I mean, common sense, which nobody that stigmatizes cannabis has any common sense about this, but common sense would tell me we aren't in a legal state where they do testing on the cannabis products, and hold that note, because I got something else on that, where they do regular testing on the cannabis products. And we don't know where this 17-year-old child got his cannabis illegally. So we really don't know what's causing this.
Yeah, they have like bad carts and stuff going around online all the time.
All the time. We talk about that regularly here. And then the piece where I said, well, hold that note. I also have an argument for anybody who wants to come at me and say, well, I used cannabis that I got out of a dispensary. Good for you, boo-boo. They should still retest it, because there are recalls in dispensaries. And some of the testing centers actually fudge the numbers for their clients, which is why they're also being investigated from time to time. So
Right.
like,
and they may not be, and these laboratories may not be testing for X, Y, and Z that may have come from this product. So,
right.
I mean, to take a look at the product itself, and here's the thing: is there any of that product left?
Is there any that? And is there anything else that would cause these symptoms to happen?
I always, and I ask, someone asked me about it. I was like, I guess at this point you start a treatment journal and a health journal and a treatment tracker, and when you're medicating, and how are you feeling, and what are your symptoms? It's
just crazy, because there's a point where he wasn't using cannabis, but his symptoms continue to get worse, which makes me think that it's probably some type of like poisoning that had infiltrated his kidneys and started shutting them down.
Septic.
Yeah. So anyways, I want to talk about that, because I know those articles come out all the time, and I just want you guys to do your due diligence about it. And not one time have I seen an article about CHS where they said, well, we tested the product, and we are absolutely certain that the only thing in this product is what is contained in the cannabis plant, and that's absolutely what the cause is.
And that patient used nothing else.
And that patient used nothing else. And they can't do it. It's just, anyways. So, well, we do have another guest that's going to be coming through shortly. He is on his way, but I think we should just get right into the topic, which is we're going to be talking about mushrooms today. I'm very excited about this.
Psilocybin,
and others too,
and others
not
too.
just. I know that a lot of you want to hear about the psychedelics, and we are going to talk about psychedelics, but Dennis actually grows all kinds of mushrooms. So I'm going to give the floor to you for a second and let you introduce yourself and tell us about what you do.
Yeah, my name is Dennis. I run a business called One Man Mushroom. And I like Farrah said, I do all types of mushroom stuff. Turkey tails, reishi, oysters, all types. So yeah, I don't really grow psilocybin just because of the whole legal aspect of it, but I know a decent bit about it. So
So, tell me, what is your favorite type of mushroom to grow?
oh,
And
well, yeah. Basically, well, any type of medicinal one is really great. Rishis, they're really, really pretty. They're also known as the Ganoderma lucidium. They're kind of like brown and orange and white, and they're really pretty. But they're also like used as a blood thinner. So,
mhm.
and they're known as like the mushroom of immortality. So that's a it's kind of it, it's kind of like snake oil shit when you say that,
But
but
is it snake oil shit? Like, I feel like there's something to that. So I'm glad that you're here because you do farm all the different types of mushrooms, and they do have some medicinal effect on some level. A lot of the different
yeah.
types of mushrooms, like you were saying about this particular one. So can you just tell us a little bit about some of the mushrooms that you grow and what some of the medicinal effects might be, even if it's not like psychedelic effect?
Oh yeah. Well, also like it's legal in DC for psilocybin sales, which I think is crazy. It's legal in a lot of places. Seattle, they just legalized the sale of it, and Denver, they decriminalized it. Canada,
Decriminalized.
you can buy microdosed capsules of psilocybin all day long if you want to. So it's kind of, to tell you the truth, when Newsweek recently let out an article stating that psilocybin is just as good, if not better, than Prozac. I would say like it's more of not just one mushroom that's great. It's like a collection of them. So
Okay.
with like reishi, there is a blood thinning effect with it, and the National Institute of Health has done like a lot of studies on this. And then also, turkey tail was just approved by the FDA to help in conjunction with modern medicine for the remission of cancer. So that's pretty important too. And there's a lot of different. Okay, so with every single mushroom has some sort of like medicinal effect with it, at least any edible ones. Um, oyster mushrooms, those are usually used in like culinary purposes, but if you like make an extract of it that's below 180 degrees Fahrenheit, there is medicinal aspects to it to actually like help you with your immunities from like colds and viruses. So they're all pretty great, you know. The problem is trying to actually grow them. There's a lot of mushrooms that you can't really honestly reproduce in a house or something like that. You could kind of reproduce them outside, but you have
Mhm.
to baby them a little bit.
Right, mimic those growing conditions. Is that the issue? Is not being able to provide the same thing, like being at, like if you go mushrooming, I know there's like a
Like
national,
foraging and stuff.
yeah, for we have a whole weekend up where I live. There they do like a little mushroom festival for the weekend, and they educate on foraging, and they go doing the walks and everything. So I mean, it's hard to create some of those natural environments to get that same, when we talk about
Yeah, exactly.
the
To
plant.
try and reproduce outside. So like morels, from what Paul Stamens he's been kind of like experimenting with it. That usually a mycelium patch is about like 4 to 5, 6 feet around, but then several feet away is actually where you're going to get your fruits at, your actual mushrooms at. Mycelium in a commercial aspect, when you're growing them in bags or something like that, think about it kind of like a mussel. So mycelium, you have well, first of all, most gourmet mushrooms and medicinal mushrooms eat the cellulose out of wood. Psilocybin, they eat different sort of stuff. They really like cocoa and vermiculite or manure. You know what I mean? But something that's super rich in nitrogen and carbon. Medicinal and gourmet mushrooms, they really like a different sort of buffet, I guess you could say. And in bags, this is with all mushrooms. So if you're growing psilocybin mushrooms in bags or something like that, or like in a tub or something like that, because there's many different techniques. It's kind of like thinking about it kind of like a muscle. So in the wild, it's really wispy. Sometimes mycelium can like span for yards, maybe even like a mile. You know what I mean? Like there's one mushroom that's the largest living organism, and it's a mushroom. It's a mycelium patch in Oregon somewhere. So that's to give you an example, and that's like acres big. So, so when you're growing it in a bag or something like that, or in a tub, when you get like that fine white mycelium, you won't see that in the wild. So there are different aspects to trying to reproduce everything to where you can end up having something. Because in the wild, it takes them from, spring all the way to fall. But if you're trying to grow them inside, people, they do it in like 21 days. So there's,
Interesting.
yeah. So to try and make it viable in our mind, in our society, in the way that we like to do things as human beings, it's pretty different.
So we have been inundated with questions. So the first question is, so there are different mushrooms for different symptoms of illnesses, or
Yeah, for
So-
sure. Yeah, so like I was saying before, so reishi is a blood thinner, and turkey tail is really good for getting rid of free radicals in your body. So it's really good for getting rid of like it's actually great for cancer. But reishi, that's been used to help regulate blood sugar and blood pressure. It's really good for blood pressure and kidneys and blood clots. So
would it be best to use them like how would it be best to use them to
benefit from it in
yeah,
capsules,
thank you.
with your food, both, all? Like
you could take extracts. Extracts would be a great thing. Usually rishis are pretty hard. Let me actually get something. I'll get a reference.
He's going to get a reference for us. I love that.
Well, let's this other question. The hope is the hope to be able to streamline sales like cannabis.
I think so.
Think people like, can you imagine like a little plant natural pharmacy? I don't know. Like
are there different types of, I think that I wonder if in a sales situation, would the sales include both mushrooms that aren't like a psychedelic or don't affect you psychoactively, as well as those more what's considered medicinal when we talk about mushrooms in general? Because when you say medicinal mushrooms, people are not thinking about what you're talking about. They're thinking about the psychedelic.
They think magic mushrooms, and I think there's some crossover in there's that circle, or those that the psilocybin and the medicinal aspect of what is helping people with depression.
Will you only be able to get mushrooms in the mushroom dispensary?
Well, so in Denver, when they decriminalized it, some guy, there's an article about it from the Denver paper. He started a little business, a little psychedelic mushroom business, and he's looking at like 45 years in prison right now because they decriminalized it to the point where you could grow it. Yeah, you could grow it in your house, but you couldn't make money off of it.
They didn't legalize sales yet. But the question is the hope that we're going to streamline it like we do with cannabis. And I think, eventually that's going to happen.
I mean, I have something that a friend gave me that is, lion's mane and cordyceps, CBD and CBG blend.
Yeah.
So it's, whatever I think it's not
Cordyceps, I just recently saw an article about that. Let me see here. And cordyceps is actually a carnivorous mushroom.
but it's all packaged up all nice, like it's like ready for like, to be sold in Walgreens. Like I don't want to, rep the company. So
not unless they paying us.
It says energy terpene blend, vegan, so it's like ready to has the supplemental fat, like it's counter ready.
Yeah. I sell mycelium supplements, so I make capsules, and I also sell like shredded reishi and things like that, turkey tail and stuff like that. They actually have a clinical trials for an anti-cancer drug derived from a cordyceps right now. They're going through the clinical trials for that right now. So that's to give you an example, but that's a carnivorous mushroom, cordyceps.
Tell us about that.
Yes. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, cordyceps, there's a couple of them. There's Cordyceps militaris, which that's in Asia. I'm thinking like Thailand. It's where it's really hot and humid. And so it's like coastal areas of Asia. And then also there's another type that's in Central America, South America, near the coastal areas. What people usually grow indoors is a commercialized, they look like Cheetos. That's the way that I can explain it. But they are, and that's Cordyceps militaris. And that's, so you used to grow that on silkworms. So you would infect silkworm pupas, and then they would grow. It's when people talk about the zombie mushroom, like from The Last of Us or something like that, that's a cordyceps strain. Okay. So it eats bugs out in the wild, and it's the zombie sort of mushroom. It like makes bugs because it really wants to live, I think, in a bird's stomach, but it will like it'll infect an ant, and then the ant will get on top of a leaf and it'll grow out of its head. It'll like bust out of its head.
Oh no. I
From
saw
Zeus.
Did you?
It's great.
Did you post the picture of I saw something like this, but I think it was with bees.
Oh yeah, they infect bees too. Yeah, they can infect bees.
I was like, oh, there's mushrooms growing out.
It's a different type of strain, but yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's like, but it's really, really good for you. It's really great. It's Cordyceps militaris. It's great for, it's just going through the anti-cancer drug thing, but it's, so reishi is really good for male potency, male vitality. Let's just
to get a hard on, y'all. It's good for getting it up. Which one again? Say it again, because we got
Cordyceps militaris. So it's like this stuff is used in like in other cultures and has been for a really long time as like, virility sort of crap. So that's really, that's kind of like a gimmick for a lot of these mushrooms in other areas of the world, which in fact, which is a really good fact to know. Most mushrooms that are grown, a third of the world, the third world countries, a third of our mushrooms is actually grown in third world countries. Another third is grown in Asia. So I think that's amazing that it's like, it's worldwide, it's like anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. Like I've seen mushrooms farms in India, like not with my own eyes, but like videos of them, like acres big, you know what I mean? And I think that's amazing. You know what I mean? It's just great. It's just great. There's mushrooms that eat plastic.
Yes, I've
heard this.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, there's all types
of stuff. So are those types of mushrooms, would they be safe to eat, or
Cordyceps militaris?
No, the ones that eat plastic.
No. So the bioluminescent mushrooms, like bitter oyster, and then things that eat plastic, I wouldn't eat those. The reason being is because of the uptake of what's in the mushroom itself. So if you're growing, you could grow oyster mushrooms on straw and used motor oil, and it will take up all of those nasty parts of the used motor oil into the mushroom itself.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you'd have to you throw that away, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it would
Yeah.
clean the straw.
Oh, got you. So it's like a hemp plant.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
it takes up a lot of it also takes up a lot of heavy metals and pesticides. So if you have a problem with button mushrooms that you buy at the store that come in the little plastic thing and they're like, $2 for like half a pound or something like that, they're nasty after 2 days. Those are sprayed with pesticides. That's why people have so many problems with them.
And they're
They're
absorbed.
sprayed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're sprayed with,
Oh.
and they absorb. They have a permeable skin. They have something called chitin in them, which is kind of like the same thing in a shell or our fingernails. But then also that cell wall that they breathe in, moisture. So it's like they're
Right.
breathing in that crap, and
Oh,
then
man.
yeah.
So along with hemp, oyster mushrooms could save the planet. The two miraculous plants together. I had a question and it left my mind because I got so like
I grow my weed plants with old blocks. So you can okay, so I've used old mushroom blocks, busted them up, and then put them in with soil, and
Mhm.
then started growing weed plants out of them, and they grow great.
Nice.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but you also get like oyster mushrooms and stuff like that too. So
Yeah. But
yeah,
it's keeping the soil clean.
yeah,
It's basically it's clean up.
yeah,
That's
yeah. It's
pretty
great.
dope.
Yeah.
It's pretty fucking awesome.
That is really cool. I don't think that people, we wanted to do a whole soil dirt session. So
Well,
I think
it's a living soil technique. If you've ever heard of there's this type of fungus that's being sold online. It's this company, I forget what their name is, but they're really big and they sell like white fuzzy mycelium basically that you add to your soil and it makes it living soil, quote unquote.
Mhm.
Kind of does. I wouldn't say it, like there's a difference between the living soil in my garden and the living soil in a pot. You know what I mean?
Right.
They don't, it doesn't have like worms and stuff like that. You need that biome. You need all
Yeah.
of that sort of stuff. So I think a lot of people they use that gimmick. You know what I mean? They use that
Mhm.
gimmick of living soil when it really is it really?
Is it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have that conversation long and drawn out with you for sure because we absolutely want to have a conversation about different
whole episode.
different substrates that we use when growing our cannabis, and we'll bring some growers on and talk about that for sure.
Yeah.
It'd be an interesting conversation. So it looks like our other guest has arrived, but there was a couple of other questions I wanted to hit you with before we bring him through.
Sure.
So those are business questions. We'll save those to the end. How long can you keep them for before they lose potency?
So, okay, so dried magic mushrooms or just any type of you can dry them out and they'll keep for a good like year in a jar as long as they stay dry in a cool.
Will the potency change? Is there any science on that, or has anyone ever like
Tested
their
the potency
mushrooms a
level?
year later and been like, "Hey, yo"?
I don't think people can hold on to magic mushrooms for that long.
You forget.
Some people do. You never know.
Backpack or
or you end up eating them. You know what I mean?
Leaving them in Denver.
As far as I know, they shouldn't lose that much potency. You know what I mean?
Yeah, got you. I'm going to save this question for bringing on our next guest, so both of you can answer it. We're going to bring Randall on. Hey, how are you?
Hey, I finally made it. Sorry to keep you waiting.
Welcome.
No worries. How are you?
I'm good.
Did you get a chance to take a breath before coming on?
No.
Take one right now.
Yeah.
All right, I'm good.
Yeah. So, Randall, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us about your a little bit about your mushroom experience?
Yeah, sure. Randall. I guess, I don't know, my angle on the whole mushroom thing is really more from or I guess it's kind of evolved into more of a shamanic / spiritual, type approach to things.
Mhm.
But it's based on my experience. I guess you could say I kind of avoid, labels or titles. I'm just me, but I have experience guiding a lot of people, and I've got, I don't know, 40 or 50 different people. After I moved here to Durango, somebody had mentioned Michael Pollan's book and asked me if I'd read it, and I hadn't. And eventually I got around to reading it, and I guess you could say that I may fit, a label that may fit would be underground guide, as is described in Michael Pollan's book. I think, to me, what was interesting about that is that I had no idea that other people were doing this. I had no idea until I went to the Telluride Mushroom Festival in 2018 that the research they're performing, specifically at University of Alabama, is exactly the same thing I've been doing. And I've not received any kind of training. There's no lineage. This is all just, something I kind of stumbled into or was shown during my personal trips.
Right. Awesome. Well, welcome to the Cannabis Closet. We are normally talking strictly cannabis, but today we wanted to touch on the fungus. Dennis grows mushrooms, all types of mushrooms. He's a mushroom farmer, and we've brought him on, and he's been giving us some really cool information about just mushrooms in general. But we're going to shift gears a little bit and get into what everybody wants to talk about, and that is the magic of the mushroom.
Nice.
Yeah.
So somebody has asked a question, and I feel like there are different answers to this question. So where is it? Where's the question? Is how often do you need to dose?
For a microdose?
For a microdose or for a macrodose, it depends on what angle you're pursuing, and I think it depends on what you're looking for, but I will give you both an opportunity to answer that question. Who wants to go first?
If you want to, Randall. Okay. Usually, so Paul Stamens and a lot of other people, they say to use less than a gram, so like a tenth of a gram, for a matter of like a week or so, and then to up that dosage up to almost, well, every week to up the dosage all the way up to like half a gram a day, which I think is excessive, but that's for microdosing. For macrodosing, I would think as many times as you think you need to. You know what I mean? So.
Exactly. No, I concur. Microdosing is not my thing. I've just, that just isn't the way that I approach it. It's not part of my personal experience. But yeah, as it relates to the macrodose, anytime anybody asks me that question, I say, well, and I think a big part of the process that we go through with the macrodoses and working with the spirits that we encountered when we enter those spaces is learning to get answers for ourselves on our own. You know what I mean? So I totally agree with what you're saying. Anytime anybody asks me the question, I throw it right back at them and say, what do you think? For me personally, my first, heroic dose, alone, eyes closed, silent darkness in the middle of the night, blew my mind. It took a good 6 weeks to kind of sort of integrate what I'd experienced. And coming off of that, I had a lot of questions. So I think, for me, the way that I gauge it is, a lot of intuition, but, kind of process through what I've experienced, try to make some sense of it, and then come back with more questions and ask, because you can have a conversation with whatever this is that we encounter,
Right.
I think too, when I'm working with people to get them prepared, what I'm looking for is that they're at a place that they can go into it without a lot of fear. Because, for me, what I've seen is, the way that I define a, quote, bad trip is resisting what we're being shown.
Right.
So for someone to be properly prepared, it requires that they go into it just completely turning loose and being ready to just observe. Right. So if you're, getting ready for your first shamanic dose, I mean, gosh, who knows how long? I mean, I've worked with people for up to a year before they were ready.
Wow, that's a
Yeah.
long time.
I mean, I mean, it
a
is
little bit of a rabbit trail since I've mentioned that particular situation. I like to work with dreams. So when I meet people, and it's what I was told in a vision is those that need your healing will find you based on your vibration, and then people just start showing up randomly, right? And so, in the more bizarre the encounter, that introduction, the more valid it is in my mind. So typically, what happens is we'll meet, and then they start dreaming. And I'll go through and interpret their dreams, and I'll watch how they're reacting to the information that they're being presented in their dreams. And that gives me a good assessment for whether or not they're willing to receive new information that may dictate a change in behavior. And if I don't see that, then I'm hesitant to go into it.
Yeah. Interesting. Somebody has asked, y'all are doing the interview for us. Thank you. Is like, even when we're talking about if somebody wanted to try microdosing or macrodosing, does height and weight and all of those things play into where they should start in their dose? Or
I would say yes, honestly, because I'm kind of a lightweight when it comes to that sort of stuff. So it's like if I took, like I said, half a gram, I think is a little bit excessive if you're taking it every day. But I've known people that, they eat a half a gram and they hardly feel anything. So I would say that, but then also I would say just to try and take it slow. It's not like you're going to want to microdose and then like go to work or drive your car or something like that, just for the safety aspect of that, because a lot of people, they think that they can. And I would say just start on a day off and see how it happens.
I say this about cannabis too. We always start low and go slow. And when we take our first doses and our first experience with whatever medicine we're using, whatever, if we're using cannabis medicinally, if we're using mushrooms medicinally, we're going to start low and go slow, because you can always take more. You cannot take less. Once it's in your system, it's in your system. And also, as Dennis stated, do it on a day when you got nothing else going on, that you can concentrate on you and your reaction to what you're doing. Randall has a different perspective on the macrodose, so I definitely want to hear from you how you feel about first timers. How would they prepare, and what is there a dosing chart that you would use? Or
well, again, it comes down to what feels right, as much as anything. From my perspective, the goal is to cross over to the other side. Some people, I guess, refer to that as ego death. I don't like that term necessarily, but I think that's a commonly applied term.
We got to come up with a new one. That seems very aggressive.
It is very aggressive. I like to talk it over.
We need new terminology. That's too aggressive. I don't like it.
So I guess if there's a rule of thumb, regardless of height, weight, experience, all that kind of stuff, from my perspective, the minimum is 3 grams. And there are some people that I've worked with, and the term that I apply to them is that their veil is thinner than others, right? So they may have some, weird, funky spiritual information coming through in random ways, which the way I interpret that is that there's messages that are awaiting them. And for those people, a lower dose will get them to the other side. Other people, where I see that they're fighting what they're being shown before going into it, I'm doing them a favor by negotiating or recommending a higher dose. So my rule of thumb is nothing less than 3 grams. And I think that we reach a point of kind of synaptic saturation. I've done some pretty heavy doses, and experientially, it's really not that much different. I think, once you get over a certain point, basically you're flat out on the bed and you're not going anywhere anyway.
Yeah.
Hey.
What I've really started trying to get into more is something called crystals of the gods, which is an extract of psilocybin done with alcohol. And it's where you take like high grade alcohol, usually, well, if you can get ethanol, but you can use Everclear, and you basically just break up a bunch of psilocybin mushrooms. And then you kind of you're supposed to boil it a little bit, make like sort of an extract out of it, but then you're supposed to evap all that liquid off. And as you're evapping it off, it creates crystals. And then you can actually, I've done it, and it's not like the greatest experience. Oh my God, I saw God. It was more like, I just felt really good. And I thought to myself, I was like, if somebody could take this at smaller doses, this is what's going to be the future, because people are afraid of hallucinations. Like a lot of people are afraid of hallucinations.
Yeah, people do stay away from what Randall's talking about because they're not ready to face that. And I think that's part of your message too, is if they're not ready, you're not ready to go on that journey with them.
Do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. I was saying, you prep some of your people. You work up to. You're not just throwing them into like a dose in a session. You're like, you're aiming for a goal. You want to see where they're at before you're gonna like throw them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, in my mind, the definition of a bad trip is resisting what we're being shown. So I'm looking for someone I'm trying to bring them to a place where they're open. And I explain to them, I tell them a lot of stories, my stories, other people that I've worked with, so that they understand what to expect, so that they're not just completely, so shocked that they miss what is there for them, But I think, like you were saying, talking about the psilocybin crystals being the future, I think, there's kind of really two different ways of looking at this whole enterprise. And, in my mind, the microdosing or, taking something on a regular basis to feel better really kind of fits into our, kind of the way that we've evolved this Western mindset that, that we are beings that have a chemical imbalance in need of a chemical solution. Or we show up at work and we have no energy for what we're doing, so we're going to take something that provides additional energy. And all psychedelics at low doses function as central nervous system stimulants. So we're going to, that's just going to happen, and that is a chemical thing. But the way I choose to look at it is, some are more interested in the bus and the way that it works. I want to take apart the bus and see how it goes this way and that way. Others are more interested, the bus takes us to see the wizard, and the mystic is more interested in what the wizard has to say than the way that the bus works.
Right.
I fall into the latter category.
Yeah.
I don't really care. It gets me there,
Yeah.
So as it comes to, and I think a text that you had sent me a week or so ago, you asked the question about different strains and whatnot, and the relative potency or the difference in the experience. I've only worked with 2 strains, and experientially they're the same. There's a big difference in potency. One of them happened to be albino penis envy, which supposedly is triple strength. I don't know if it is or not. But I don't care.
Right.
I don't. If as long as it's got psilocybin, as long as I cross over to the other side, that's what matters to me.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Like the thing that about. Oh, sorry about that. The thing about penis envy and albino penis envy and all of those is that I've always heard from like old school aspect of that cubensis are just cubensis.
Right.
Like it doesn't really matter. And like I've done a little research on it, I guess. I've like looked at it to where it's like there's the Azorans. You see these words, you don't hear them. You know what I mean? So it's like the Azorsensis or something like that, and that's supposed to be a strain of B positive. And it's I don't know, man. Like I think that I'm right there with you with the whole thing of like they should both be experientially similar.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like when people say, "Oh yeah, penis envy is triple strength," I'm like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever you say, man.
Well, I started off with penis envy, and I didn't know that it was triple strength, right?
Yeah.
So I did my 3.5 grams of penis envy in the middle of the night, and just had this mind-blowing experience. And I continued with that. And then, as I was trying to make sense of it, part of my own integration process was listening to a lot of Terrence McKenna because, I'm just this, crazy dude, taking mushrooms in my bedroom. I had nobody to talk to, right? So here's Terrence McKenna that's got just this plethora of YouTube, lectures on YouTube. So I'm like, okay, what does this guy have to say? You know, we've had similar experiences. And I forgot where I was going.
He's great. He's great. He's amazing. Terrence McKenna is amazing. He's amazing. He's great.
I just want to tell you guys that I've just experienced my favorite part of the show today, which is having two men talk about penis MB while we listen, and mind-blowing experiences. They are having mushroom talk. They are absolutely.
This is all they're talking about mushrooms. It's a strain, yes. Just like cannabis gets these rando names.
Yes.
Same thing. My friend who was I wanted to be on the show that I did not communicate time and place properly. Talks about Ecuadorian cubes and some things that he is using for his journey and for his purposes. And so and he was talking about this one that makes your hands breathe, and I was like, okay. So
it's interesting.
Well, you know, and as it relates to that choice, well, I know where I was going with the albino penis MB. Thanks for that clarification. You know, like I said, you know, I started off taking this. I didn't know, you know, I had no idea what the dosage was, but I was taking, you know, 5 grams of albino penis envy, which if you know, believe what you read, that's 15 grams, right? And I liked it because, you know, and I would use what they call the lemon tech, which is, you know, you grind up the dried mushrooms, soak it in lemon juice for about 20 minutes, add hot water, and then, you know, toss it down the hatch, bits and all, more like a soup than a tea. And I would, you know, experience a come up in 15 minutes. Yeah. And I like that because I don't like, you know, taking it another way without, you know, maybe a lower dose, a different strain, without the lemon tech. You may be sitting around for an hour waiting to feel the effects. Yeah. That to me is when the anxiety starts to build. I want to be just kicked over to the other side and see in 4 hours, I'm gone. You know?
The reason why that it takes so long is because what I was talking about earlier with the chitin that's in their cell. They're made with all mushrooms have chitin in them, which is the same thing as your fingernails and stuff like that, and shells and things like that. So it's like you have to cook them. So like the lemon juice actually kind of chemically breaks them down.
Right.
So you actually have to cook them to actually get all the benefits from them. And what I usually do when I'm taking psilocybin is what I like to do is I like to simmer it in a pan, right? Take a good bit and simmer it in a pan and for about 20-30 minutes. And then usually I'm with somebody and we just drink that. And yeah, it's pretty intense for a good long time, but it's, you know, it is what it is. It's, you know, this is the point, right?
Well, yeah. To me, that's the point, you know. Yeah. You know, and as you were saying, for a lot of people, that scares the hell out of them.
Mm-hmm. You know? It does. It's very scary.
I think that's a big part of it. You know, I think, you know, one of the things that I've learned from this whole, you know, thing and the various people that I've worked with is that we may not know it. It may be completely unconscious or subconscious, but I think we all have, you know, carry with us some existential angst, you know, fear of death. And when you enter that spirit realm, you're going to the same place, in my opinion, you know. So just by virtue of the fact, and I think that may be why people refer to it as ego death, as if it's a one-time thing. Mm-hmm. You know, because your consciousness is leaving your body, you're going to another realm, and once you get there and you become comfortable with it, death is, you know, I mean, this whole existence just seems trivial, you know, right. And death is no big deal, and I think that's, you know, when we talk about, you know, relieving symptoms of anxiety and depression and things like that. I mean, really, it's a spiritual experience that does that. In my view, it's not a chemical thing. You know, mm-hmm. if we choose to take it on a regular basis, in my view, we're choosing to. Well, it's kind of like when, you know, I was advised, I don't know, 15 years ago to take antidepressants, and I took them for about a month, and I said, this is stupid. I'm taking a drug to tolerate a dysfunctional situation. Right?
Yeah.
Why not get to the root of the problem and fix the situation? And, you know, again, you know, when you view it as a spiritual thing versus a chemical thing, it's based on information, mm-hmm. Receiving information. And both myself and the people that I've worked with have seen just, had incredible insights into very complex relationships or for me, I was in a very complex custody litigation battle, and I was shown some insights about it, and that directed my next steps.
Nice.
We have a question it says for Randall, but both of you can definitely answer this. What are your thoughts on the other practices that are not mushrooms, so that are available for these types of experiences, like ayahuasca and things like that? What are your thoughts on those types?
You want to go first?
Oh, I know. Yeah, like one of my most greatest experiences was doing ayahuasca by myself in this room. So, so I made a brew out of some Syrian rue and Mimosa hostilis root bark, and I've done DMT a bunch. And when I did DMT the first time, I was like, so there is a God. Like I like, so there is some higher power. There has to be. Like, I don't know why. But it was a very intense experience. And so the second time, the first time that I did ayahuasca, I was sitting here and I drank it and it didn't taste good at all. It was pretty bad. And I used lemon and, and, I ended up seeing, like, within 45 minutes, I started seeing, I closed my eyes and I was like in this room of like stained glass and things like that. And it was like a room of people with like, they were so welcoming and nice. So it's like, to me, that was one of the most life-changing experiences ever. And I'm very thankful for it. So that is definitely a great practice. I wish that would be a more regular thing in our society.
Yeah. I tried to brew my own ayahuasca. I did the same as you, ordered it, and I ordered the Syrian rue, which I understand happens just as a side note. Because the acacia tree and whatnot originates in the Middle East, the visuals, the experience tends to be more Egyptian.
Yeah.
The Sphinx, Ankhs, the various Egyptian gods and whatnot. The experiment didn't work for me. I didn't go anywhere. And the thing that it taught me is that I like mushrooms because, there's a lot of things you can do when you're growing mushrooms to screw up the process. But as long as that fruit comes up out of the cow dung, you know what it is. With the ayahuasca, like you're saying, you gotta boil it multiple times. You're reducing it, and I thought, how the hell can I come up? How do I know what the potency is here? I have no clue. So I think with ayahuasca, there's definitely an art to the preparation that mushrooms kind of removes from that whole process. Experientially, I've worked with people that have done ayahuasca and mushrooms, and one person in particular, she's upstairs, and I hear all this commotion, right out of the gate, right when she should be coming up. And so I go upstairs to check on her, and she's sitting on the bed just cussing up a storm. And I said, what are you experiencing? And she said it's the exact same thing as ayahuasca. And what I gleaned from that experience was that she was opinion shopping. She didn't like what she was shown with ayahuasca, so she thought she'd try mushrooms, right? But it was the same spirits that showed up to her and giving her the same message with both individuals.
That's very interesting.
It is interesting.
So, and what I advise people, I feel like we're called to one or the other. It could be San Pedro, it could be iboga, it could be ayahuasca. And again, I just advise people to trust their intuition. Which one are you drawn to?
Now, I did purge. Okay, so I did purge with ayahuasca, like bad. Like at the end of the night, it was green, and like I have no idea how that was. So and I was like, I guess I'm throwing up all the bad because there is a mystical aspect every time you trip. Like I believe that also.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that it should be treated like that a little bit. You know what I mean? It shouldn't just be treated like I want to get high, because then you're not really, I guess. But see, the big thing about the whole spiritual aspect, in my opinion, is that even if you do get high, you do end up getting just a spiritual aspect out of it. Like there's people that try to like just take LSD just to take it, and then they're like, wow, that was amazing. They're, like they had it may have did what we would want to intend to do. that they didn't know what would happen anyway. You know, did that make sense?
Yeah.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as it relates to the purging, there's one fellow that I worked with that he was struggling with alcohol, and he wound up purging the entire night.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know whether, was it a spiritual thing? There's something that happens at the molecular level, and and you see things that are, you're able to see into your body sometimes. And for instance, what I've seen is, I had a lot of muscular tension. My body was just clenched up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to see nerves reconnecting, and then the deep tissue opening up, allowing blood flow, and then toxins being flushed from that tissue.
Oh, wow.
And simultaneously, there was energy that was being released from my body that my interpretation of it is it's going out into the universe as a energetic prayer, so to speak. The spiritual, like, oh, you're finally letting go of this. We got it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, I'm receiving visions that pertain to a particular situation. So, for example, I've been doing 2-hour deep tissue massages, and my massage therapist gave me this ball that I could roll around on to self-massage. So I'm experiencing this major energetic release from my body, and I put that ball on my hip, and it takes me to a particular past life. So then I put it on my shoulder, and I'm in a different one. I put it in my hip again, and I'm back in the other one. So apparently, where we're clenched up, and that's one of the things that I look for when I'm preparing someone. If their body's all clenched up, I'm like, you got messages waiting.
Oh shit! I got messages. I got lots of messages.
What you're doing. This is why
I got lots of messages.
So, Sister asked, what are the experience differences? And I think that what both and everyone is really trying to say is that it's really what journey or what is going on with you personally, and where you're building, what you're building up to release. And so everyone's experience is different, I think, in an emotional or a mental way, but I think on a physical way, some makes everyone laugh, or it makes you cry, or I think that
and yawn.
Like
yawn. I mean, that yawn and the eye.
The thing with my teeth, like, why do my teeth feel like they're gonna fall out of my mouth if I chew gum?
Full aspects are there for everyone.
Well, yeah, and I think that's I think you touched on one of the the bits of misinformation that's been propagated out there. I hear people advising others. They say, well, gosh, if you're experiencing anxiety or depression, your mindset is going to determine what you experience during your trip. I don't necessarily believe that. I mean, I've gone into it just so low I could walk under a snail's belly, and had it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to get my ass kicked, right? It just means that, frankly, for me, it means that I need it more than another time otherwise. But you had mentioned sometimes you laugh, sometimes you cry. My interpretation of that is that's what we've repressed. I could have repressed joy, and I need to express that. I could have repressed sorrow, and I need to express that. And so it all depends on what's inside of me that I haven't allowed to express itself.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw,
yes,
yeah. What are the experiences differences? Sometimes they don't talk about some bad times too, like a bad trip. Like I took some mushrooms 2 years ago, and I was out in my garden, and the sprinklers went off, and I had a PTSD episode. So sometimes the experience differences can definitely range from life changing to but that episode ended up making me go get therapy for a year and a half. So
So it exposed to you some repressed fear, and that's so that was you took your takeaway. Yeah.
Well, when that happened, I was like, oh, I because I was a little bit depressed and things like that beforehand, and then that came out, and I started crying and this and that for like 4 or 5 hours, and it was, and the thing that triggered it was the sprinklers. So I was just like, okay, I think it's time. I think I have to go. I think I have to go get some professional help right now. So this doesn't happen again.
Well, and that's, to me, that's integration, right? You received new information and you reacted. You responded to it appropriately. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've also
it's not
seen other
necessarily-
people take hit acid and kind of go through psychosis, and they ended up, getting help that they needed and things like that, but they never touched drugs again. So, there's like everybody's saying here, your experiences are different no matter, no matter what.
Well, and to your point about, you use the term psychosis, and that's what we're doing. We're inducing psychosis intentionally with the expectation that we're going to come back, right? What I've seen during a trip, when someone's having a quote bad trip, they're fighting what they're being shown. And my little trick is to ask them, what are you experiencing? And so they look over at me and they're like, oh, this guy's chill. There must not be, an emergency here. And then they begin to look at what they're being shown in order to describe it to me, and then they slide right back into it. So my theory for persistent psychosis is they just aren't prepared to receive the information that's there for them, and so their mind is working overtime to try to fight it and block it out. And that's one of the big reasons that the preparation is so important. And it's not for everybody, And that's another thing that I think that some of the misinformation, those that are trying to make a business out of it, those that are promoting the pharmaceutical, medical, therapeutic model are looking for a way to where they don't have to take the time to do the quote gatekeeping to, qualify people for the experience. Now, there are certain things, if somebody is experiencing, psychosis or schizophrenic, type symptoms, my interpretation of that is this is the same type of information that's trying to come through without the benefit of entheogens. So we want to engage in integration type exercises to be able to resolve that. Right. Where the typical therapist or psychotherapist or whatever, their approach to that whole thing is you won't walk into a mental hospital and see someone that is diagnosed with schizophrenia that's not medicated. Therapists just do not deal with it. This it begins to enter the realm of the shaman, where it's like, okay, I've had experience with these kind of symbolic messages and whatnot. I've worked through my own. I've helped other people work through it. What's the information that's coming through to you? So rather than basically saying to someone that's hearing voices, oh, you got to take a pill to suppress that, I'm going to say, what are they saying to you? Right. Again, what are you experiencing? Tell me about it.
Yeah.
That could be quite comforting, actually.
Mm-hmm. It could really help with the quality of life of somebody, that's for sure.
Yeah. I want to just take a moment to put the disclaimer out there for all of us that nobody on this panel are doctors or lawyers. We're speaking from experience and education and research that we've done on our own. And so I just want to keep that in mind. But I also want to remind everybody that doctors don't get an education on cannabis or mushrooms. So keep that in mind as well.
No, totally. So one more brought up something that I felt like it was worth, making a point about. It has to do with choosing who we trip with. And that's very, very important, because
that's a very good point.
As soon as you go into that space, the one way Terence McKenna describes it, it's boundary dissolving, right? When you go into that space, your intuition just, goes through the roof. So if there's some weirdness between me and somebody else that hasn't been addressed, it's going to come to the surface right out of the gate. Or if I've got, intentions or motivations that are undisclosed and non-consensual, that's going to come up right out of the gate. So I feel like that, and again, I think this kind of speaks to, those that are promoting this, pharmaceutical, medical, therapeutic model. Not everybody has business guiding people into this space. If you're not doing it with pure motives, altruistic motives, that's going to be known, and it's going to wind up either producing a bad trip, or it's going to produce a major distraction that's going to have to be resolved right then before they can move forward.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And I think, to me, one of the big differences is, people refer to the wounded healer. And, if you've been through this process yourself, it creates a level of empathy. It's like, okay, I've experienced a benefit from this. And to the extent that someone shows up, I want to share that with them. I'm not going out looking for anybody to say, hey, you know,
Right.
you need this. It's whoever shows up, and that produces that altruistic motive. You know,
Right. Like that guy.
once you
on-
get those experiences, it's like I want you to experience the same healing that I've experienced as well.
Right. Like I saw this special on Vice. It was like the Kentucky Shaman or something like that, and he had like he sold stuff. He sold like trips to his house out in Kentucky to like make ayahuasca and make people trip, and like it's some I don't know. Some people you can kind of see through their motives because I definitely he had a lot of people that were having bad trips in that special, that's for sure. So
Right, and I think, you know, being able to intuit another person's motive is really the primary reason that this whole thing has been illegal for so long.
yeah.
You know, I mean, and this is where it's going to just, you know, has the potential to completely upend our culture.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got all of a sudden got all these people that are now able to intuit someone else's motives, well, those with ill intent, you know, what are they going to do?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Right.
Marla asked a question that I want to answer first, and then I'm going to let y'all answer the question further. The only two things, Marla, that I remember from my college biology course is, number one, do not put a dead body in a mossy area because it's going to preserve the evidence. And number two, there's a mushroom that looks exactly like, I think it's the white button mushroom, that will kill you in like 20 minutes by shutting down all of your organs.
Yeah.
So
there are bad mushrooms.
there are bad mushrooms.
Oh, there are.
I'm not sure if that's what you meant by that, but I'll give it to the experts here. Go ahead, guys.
No, there definitely are. Out in the wild, there's a lot of there's less fatal mushrooms than there are known fatal plants. I know that. But we don't know all of the mushrooms yet. So there's mushrooms that grow under like on the seafloor. That's one thing that I discovered that was kind of crazy. It's not psilocybin, but it's on the seafloor, which is kind of like insane to think about. And then there's also there's mushrooms definitely that'll end your life very, very quickly. Some of them have like straight up arsenic on them. The Meta muscura, the red mushroom with the white spots, those white spots that's arsenic. So it's a defense mechanism. They use chemicals as a defense mechanism.
Right.
And the ones that eat plastic, you don't want to eat those because they
no. The bitter oyster, the ones that glow in the dark, those will definitely hurt you too. Yeah, definitely. It's also where they're growing out from too. So if they're growing out of certain things can produce bad mushrooms. So in some forests, like in some pine forests, I would be wary about any mushroom that you find there. So that because pine is supposed to have is not supposed, well, the mushrooms that grow on pine aren't supposed to be edible usually, from what I've been told. So yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Well, you know, we've really not studied mushrooms. You know, this is a relatively new thing. There's all kinds of species, like you're saying, those that grow on the ocean floor. I mean, we've never really taken the time to dive in and understand what these are all about. But mushrooms share more DNA with humans than they do with plants.
Yep.
You know, they inhale oxygen and exhale CO2 just like we do. They've developed a lot of antibodies and whatnot that may benefit us. You know, but I kind of wonder, when they ask that question, are there any bad mushrooms? I think they've been such a mystery to us as the human race, as a human culture, that there's justified fear of mushrooms in general that translates to fear of mushrooms containing psilocybin.
Right.
My mom, okay, so I'll take it from this aspect. She is like 75, so she's like a real elderly boomer. And she says, oh yeah, we didn't eat mushrooms back then. And that was because, first of all, they were too expensive to buy. So there is like a classist aspect with mushrooms. And then second of all, she was like, yeah, it was just something that we didn't, there's this, there's a mushroom, there's a lot of mushrooms in Italy, but there's this certain type of mushroom in Italy that will kill you. The white button mushroom that you're talking about, that yeah, that's in Italy. So, and my people come from Italy. So that's another thing. So there's, and this has been
So were
known
y'all putting it
since
on
Roman
people's
times.
pizzas and being like,
Yeah,
peace
like-
offering?
Yeah, it's been known since Roman times, though. Like, it's like the Romans have talked about like mushrooms killing people. So that's it's been around since since the year one, basically. So
Well, I think it's an interesting thing, when you think about, how did somebody figure out that mushrooms with psilocybin produce these effects? Who was the first person that that was in a field that had cattle or horses in it, that rather than choosing to kill the live animal, instead chose to eat the fruit that was growing out of the turd? Right? I mean, that's a pacifist that has a lot of courage.
Well, that's how you
Yeah.
find bugs too. So if you flip over a cow patty, you'll find bugs also, and like grubs and things like that. Like they still eat termites in like a lot of different parts of the world. They still eat grubs in a lot of different parts of the world. So that's a decent type of protein. And in the ancient world, in Central America, they used a lot of different plants that we use now, like tobacco. They used they ended up making this, I guess you could say, extract, and they took it a certain way that would make them hallucinate. They would eat psilocybin mushrooms and play like this game that's kind of like basketball, but if you lost, you'd lose your head. Yeah, they would have to. Yeah,
roulette.
it's on the walls. It's on the walls of the arena. The mushroom
Basketball roulette.
Yeah. So it's kind of strange how plants, medicinal plants, and teaching mushrooms and things like that.
Yeah, I would love to have been around when somebody figured out that some mushrooms were edible and some mushrooms were not. And like, the discovery of all of that.
Right. Who would be it'd be like Russian roulette.
Yeah, it would.
You
Absolutely.
absolutely.
It was like some classist system too, where it was like, you eat that. You do it first.
I guess when you're starving, anything that looks good ends up becoming edible for a second. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, Terrence and Dennis McKenna's story about La Chorrera. They were somewhere in either South America or Mexico, and they were these starving hippies that were cruising around trying to score with shaman in various places, and they had nothing to eat, so they just ate mushrooms, nothing but for like a month.
Jesus,
magic mushrooms.
Jesus, that's insane. I do know that. In like ancient Middle East area, the thing about psilocybin mushrooms there, because they couldn't get them, right? So there's a Viking way of doing it where the shaman would eat the Amida muscaria and then he would pee into a cup or something like that, and then the other Vikings would drink it and they would get like the psychedelic effects. Well, with psilocybin, you could do the same thing. And
I wish the people that were only going to listen to this could see my face right now, because that's gross.
I know. With psilocybin, you could do the same thing. So there's rumors, or there's rumors of it where it's like some priests out there, or I guess priests of Islam. I guess you would call them that, right? Is that the actual correct term?
Iman or something like that. Anyway.
Yeah. I don't know. And I apologize if we're not being correct on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I don't want to offend anybody.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So the thing is that they would switch out, you know what I mean? One would eat psilocybin mushrooms because they were so hard to find. And, they would pee into a thing. The other priest would drink it. And they would recycle it. they would recycle. But that's like a thing like in the ancient world. So
It sounds like something. That's
Well, the
on
similar story that
OnlyFans.
I've heard is that the Siberian shaman, well, that the reindeer would eat the Amanita muscara, and it contains two main alkaloids. One is iboteine and one is muscarol. And somehow, when it passes through the digestive system, it would convert iboteine to muscarol, which is a psychoactive component of it. So supposedly the Siberian shaman would drink the reindeer urine.
okay.
It's a way to
How do you get rain? How do you get it? How do you collect reindeer urine?
Yeah,
I have so many questions on that one. And I like literally was waiting for you both to say something about excrement because I was like already out on the urine, but then I thought reindeer, somebody's gonna be eating shit here in a minute. But no, we went back to the urine, which is harder to collect, so I don't even understand. Like
Well, maybe
how
ancient people
Oh,
also
this is
thought, like,
legend.
just like pee in the cup. Like I don't. It sounds weird. I mean, I was out at urine. I'm not doing that.
No.
Not doing that. Sounds like an OnlyFans page. Not into
yeah, I wouldn't do it either. I wouldn't do it either. But I think it's.
it. Wait, pause.
For
To be
sure.
fair, I would eat the mushrooms and be in a cup, but that's as far as I can go with that. I can't
You'll be the high
switch the
priest.
roles.
The high priest.
Like I would, if somebody else wants to drink it, call me. We'll do an OnlyFans. Okay.
I was gonna drink something, but now I don't want to.
Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. What was there was a question. Are there do you either of you have recommendations of mushrooms that people might want to give a shot to if they're looking to use it for medicinal purposes?
Do you want to try, Randall?
Well, how are we defining medicinal? Oh, are you talking about like lion's mane and
yeah, those types of things that are on the market, maybe that people have access to?
Yeah, I know nothing.
Oh,
know
well,
nothing
yeah,
on
I would say lion's mane is really good for anxiety and depression. Yeah, and then also, like I said, with turkey tail and reishi. But lion's mane is probably the best for depression. There's also another type of mushroom called agarikon, which is supposed to be an antiviral, antibacterial mushroom. I'm actually doing experiments with it now with coffee, and it's working out. It's like green coffee, which is kind of, you don't think that mushrooms can grow on that. Most mushrooms can't, actually. So for this to actually be growing on that, and for then, yeah, that it's just a good thing. It can chemically roast coffee, so that's pretty interesting.
That's so interesting. I
Yeah.
mean,
I know.
We're gonna be here for hours. No,
Some of this, I'm
kidding.
like, I'm not really sure what you're saying, but yes, it's so interesting.
It's like you're like, it can roast coffee. I'm like, whoa, these things are. I mean, like honestly, even the non-magical mushrooms are extremely magical. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, they're pretty interesting.
It's crazy.
And
I think fundamentally,
Go ahead, Randall.
I think fundamentally, one of the things that I'd like for people to keep in mind is that we have co-evolved with these natural plant medicines, cannabis and mushrooms. Well, we have the cannabinoid receptors, and we have receptors with the serotonin receptors. We even have muscarol receptors that work with the Amanita muscara. We co-evolved. I mean, this was supposed to happen. Yeah,
and psilocybin, it actually attaches to the serotonin receptor with no problem. It's and let me see here. In this study, psychedelic effects of psilocybin correlate with serotonin A2 receptor occupancy and plasma psilocin levels, which basically means it makes you happy. So that's
yeah. But as I understand it, the reason that the LSD trip lasts longer is the shape of the molecule stays in that receptor for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
So it has less to do with the dosage and more to do with what is it that you're ingesting. For me with the magic mushrooms, it's 4 hours on the dot. I mean, you could put a stopwatch on it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I usually, when I take more than, I do microdose, so I take it regularly. And I honestly, I don't know, and maybe it's a placebo effect or maybe it's actually working. But when I grind, I just, this is from my perspective. You don't have to follow it. I'm not a doctor, but I grind mine. I put them in capsules, and right now I'm taking 2 capsules in the morning and in the evening, and it's actually, it helps my mood throughout the day. It does help me I take less naps, and we could blame it on whatever we want to blame it on, but whatever it is, it's working for me. But having said that, I've talked to Randall actually, and I am very interested in taking a journey and experiencing it on that level, when I'm ready to do so. So I've talked to my therapist about it too. So it's like, it's not something that I would ever shy away from. I'm very interested in that because I think that it would be like a breakthrough for me,
Right.
So
my sister is saying the same thing. She would like to experience something like this where it takes a plan working up to. My sister's very regimented like that. She needs to know all the things before she's gonna.
So we'll make sure to get your contact information, and if anybody would like to reach, I mean, I don't know, are you okay with that?
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to just put that out there.
Like I said, I was told in a vision, those who need your healing will find you based on your vibration. I don't put myself out there. And I have to kind of try to suss out, is this someone that was sent to me, or is this something that's more,
right.
I don't know, we thought it was a good idea. But, you mentioned your sister, wanting to, kind of go through the, process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Typically rooted in the desire to control something, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And my approach to dealing with that is basically say, look, when you go into this experience, you're not going to be in control. And to the extent that you're in control, you're going to have a bad time. So we're going to do all that we can to give you as much comfort. I don't know what you're going to be shown, but there are some commonalities. You could see aliens, you could see past lives, you could see, repressed trauma, whatever it is. You just have to be open to whatever it is you're being shown. Mm-hmm. And that's a big part of what the preparation process is about. Is kind of moving someone from desiring control to being okay, at least for 4 hours, of not being in control.
Okay, well, that's going to take me a minute.
Right?
4 hours.
I've been shown correlate to any belief system. I would have to say, and I haven't studied it, but I'd have to say it correlates with Taoism or Taoism, which is basically just identify where the energy is going and get in the flow. Don't try to manipulate anything, just accept, almost kind of a predestination type mindset. And what I've been shown personally is, if you want to debate predestination versus free will, it's a both and. What I was shown is I wrote my life story before I incarnated. So I wrote it, but yet what I wrote is predestined.
Right.
So the whole enterprise requires the ability and willingness to let go of control.
Yeah, that's a real big thing about tripping. It really is. That's
I would have to agree with that.
I don't really trip with other people that often who aren't willing to do that. Because if they're not willing to do that, then you have bad situations. I've had bad situations to where I was tripping with somebody and they were like, I'm going to leave right now. And they got in their car and they tried to drive away and things like that. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, what are they running from? Yeah. So there are problems. So
yeah.
Well, and like I said, the one little, tip or trick, if you're going to sit with somebody or quote guide them, if they experience, if they're resisting, they always ask them, what are you experiencing? Mm-hmm. And as they begin to describe it, they just slide right back in it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing because, you can't necessarily know what someone's thinking unless you're on mushrooms, and then what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting the effort that we go through to keep information suppressed. And my theory is that the reason is we know that once we receive that information, we're going to have to do something about it.
That
we
part.
know fear change and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that part. We don't want to like take accountability or do any of the work. We
Right.
yeah.
Well,
Generally speaking, I say in the general we. I say in the general we. I'm not talking if hey, listen.
Well, I think it's interesting. They refer to ayahuasca as the grandmother. They refer to the cacti entheogens, San Pedro, mescaline as grandfather. And Maria Sabina refers to the mushrooms as the children. One of the things that I've noticed is, and maybe this is why the therapists are trying to get involved, it tends to release repressed childhood trauma.
Oh, yeah.
And more often than not, I'd say at least 80% of the women that I've worked with have had some sort of sexual trauma, typically before the age of 8, that they've completely repressed. So imagine a situation where, it's like, gosh, I think my father may have done something inappropriate. And I have a relationship with him.
Sorry, pause. Sorry for not giving you a trigger warning on that, everybody. But
sorry.
A little triggering. You can continue, though. No, we talk about serious things here.
Right. But you can imagine, if you have an unconscious understanding that there has been something that has happened and you still have an ongoing relationship with the person that's caused you harm in the past, that's going to require a change. You can't go back. You can't unsee what you've been shown. Right. So you have to go into it with the desire to experience truth, regardless what it is, because you're going to be shown truth.
Right. That's an absolute. Man, this conversation is so interesting. I've learned so much from you guys.
This has been
great. From start to finish, from like beginning of mushroom to psychedelic mushroom, magic mushrooms. You guys are very interesting. Your stories are super interesting.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
You want to hear an interesting story? The wild one that kind of characterizes, what it can be about?
Yeah. We would love to.
All right. Okay. So married couple, early 30s, from the southeastern U.S., before they relocated. One was lily white, one's Hispanic. They were both shown separately that they had experienced past lives together as slaves in that same part of the country, right? So it was the wife's second experience. And the first experience, she was shown a lot of information about her father. The second one was about her mother. And she knew it was going to be about her mother because the dreams leading up to the experience the week before were all about her mom, right? So the original plan was that they were both going to be here. She showed up by herself. And I asked her, I said, would you like your husband to be here with you? And she said, I don't know. He told me I just need to face whatever I'm shown. And I asked her the question. I said, well, what would make you feel more comfortable? And she thought about it for a minute. She said, I would like you to have him here. So we text him when he comes over. So I wound up giving him just a tiny dose. I think I'd mixed up 2 grams for myself, and he took maybe a third of it. So she's on the come up. I see that it's starting to hit. Asked her if she'd like her husband to escort her upstairs. So then she said yes. So they go upstairs. And this is kind of, I think that bit of the story has to do with releasing control, allowing things to play out as they're supposed to, right? Because there is a weird magical element to it that kind of sets up the whole thing, right? So they go upstairs, and what I'm experiencing downstairs is it feels like there's a 1,000-pound weight on my chest. I'm having to intentionally breathe into it just to be able to breathe, right? She had a major blockage in her heart chakra. Her husband's experiencing it as well. All 3 of us are having to breathe into it. She hears me tell her telepathically that she needs to breathe into it. So that's what we're doing, right? So her husband sits on the edge of the bed, and she's on the floor, and she curls to the right, curls to the left, and then kisses his feet while his hands are on the top of her head. Okay. And they had an Afro-Caribbean healer, the spirit of an Afro-Caribbean healer show up. Okay. That was guiding him through this process. Well, afterward, they Google it, and that is a Haitian Afro-Caribbean healing ceremony that they did that none of us knew anything about.
Oh, interesting.
So this healer tells her to go into the bathroom and lift the toilet lid. So she goes in there, lifts it up, and she sees her mother's face. And she says, flush the toilet. So she flushes it, and the woman says to her, she be with you no more, in this Afro-Caribbean dialect. That's just, that's about 20 minutes of a 4-hour experience that was just off the chain. You know?
That's amazing.
Crazy.
That's really
But that's the kind of stuff. And what was interesting too about their whole story is when he was a child, again, he's this lily white guy growing up in a wealthy family in the southeastern United States, and he was oddly fascinated by voodoo dolls, and he collected them. Well, what he was shown is that was his form of spirituality in a past life. So on one hand, it's just shocking and blows your mind. On the other hand, it makes complete sense. And that's the way these things work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's my
yeah. Well, yeah, I keep telling everybody in the audience that, what you say matters, and how you speak into the universe matters, and things like that. And it's because I absolutely believe that we can speak telepathically. Right. And the more that we do that, the better we'll get at it. And when you're using psychedelics, it tends to be easier, because if you're willing to go into it and open up, then it's that kind of letting go of control and just opening up your mind and allowing yourself to speak, to whatever you need to speak to, I think.
Right. And I think, once we've had these experiences and we begin to carry these into our, everyday life, the effect that it has is it's like, okay, I'm not in control. I'm just going to, let things play out, but I'm going to be completely consciously aware of what's happening. Right. So if, whatever, my boss has some intention, I can tap into that. Now, I may not confront them with it, because, you'd be labeled as crazy, but I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind and kind of watch it play out. Right.
Not going to forget about it.
Well, yeah, exactly. But it creates a burden as well, because, it's a burden to be able to see what everybody's got going on.
Right. Yeah.
It's
I can see that.
Tricky to navigate.
For sure. Well, let's do we have any last questions from the audience? Recommendations to try. Penis envy was a favorite conversation.
Well, I really like B positives a lot, honestly. And they're easy to get to, and they're a more stable strain to get from a company. Usually every time that I've had to grow penis envy or albino penis envy or any of those novelty strains, it's really hard. They're very difficult to grow, at least for me. So.
Well, you're right. The mushrooms produce psilocybin until the cap opens and the veil breaks.
Oh yeah,
which is when you're supposed to harvest it. Well, my understanding is, the reason they call it penis envy is that the cap doesn't open up, so it looks like the penis, right? And I don't know if that's what increases the potency. Maybe because the cap isn't opening, it's continuing to increase the potency. But because of that, when you order from a spore vendor, it's very difficult to harvest a spore. So typically, what you're going to wind up with is a liquid culture, which in some ways can be easier, in some ways is more difficult to grow.
Yeah.
And I think because it's a hybrid, I mean, what they've done is they've monkeyed with the genetics to where it's basically unnatural.
Yeah.
I think from that perspective, it's going to make it more difficult to grow.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. From what I know, though, like with the size of the mushroom, so it's like you have these things called aborts, which are like little babies. They're like this big. And from what I know, at that point, they're like they already have psilocybin in them. But like by the time that they actually grow to that point to the veil, you can actually pick them at like 1/10 of that size, or even like half of that size, and they'll still have as much psilocybin in them as if they were super big. So there's been tests on it. The reason why I bring up Paul Stamets a lot is because he's actually the only guy that's done actual like scientific testing, like where like they see how much is in what and all that sort of stuff. So I hate bringing him up all the time, but
are you saying the size matters or it doesn't matter?
It does. Well, It somewhat does. It somewhat does. Like you don't want to pick them when they're too small, but like if you don't want them to grow to like this huge size, you don't have to either. From what I know, if you do grow into that huge size, that's probably your that mushroom would have as much psilocybin in it as something that would be a tenth of the size of it.
So for production purposes, if you were growing and you wanted to continue a cycle, you could potentially then harvest earlier with the smaller and then get started again. Or
yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, and as it relates to growing and the size and whatnot, there are people that get into using agar and monkeying with trying to come up with a particular I don't know genetics that are going to produce larger fruits, and why? I don't get it. To me, if you've got say a shoebox sized tub of manure, that's going to produce a particular weight over 2, maybe 3 flushes. Yeah. And whether they show up as small mushrooms or one big one, I don't think it really matters.
Yeah, you could still eat them. They'll still get you off for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in the big ones, I've got to slice up to fit in my dehydrator anyway, so it's who cares?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you guys have a rule that you always follow when you're doing mushrooms? I have a rule that I follow that I haven't followed in the past, but I follow it now.
What's your rule?
My rule is that I don't take a large dose 2 days in a row. Uh-huh. So if I'm just like going like, I'm going to go to Meow Wolf, so I'm going to take a nice dose and get a little, psychedelic. I won't do it the next day too, because the next day feels horrible for me.
The one rule that I have is that I don't eat spaghetti beforehand.
Oh, is there a reason for that?
I don't know what it is, but if I eat spaghetti and then I'm tripping and I throw up, I think that like my inner stomach lining, I think like I'm throwing up an organ. Like it goes from 0 to 100 real quick.
Close my ears.
I'm sorry, but if it goes from 0 to 100 because it's all red, and I'm like, oh God, and like,
graphic content. So because when you said that, I felt it.
Right.
Yes, we felt it too. So
I'm sorry.
Good rule to follow, everyone. Do not eat spaghetti or red pasta sauce before
or noodles. Don't eat
noodles.
Especially if there might be a reason that you might need to purge. And if adding to that rule, if you feel the need to purge, don't suppress it. Just do it. Just do it.
Just get it over with. Just get it done.
Let it go. Help it out if you need to.
Yeah.
Push it through if you need to. Whatever you got to do, but get it out.
And hydrate.
And hydrate.
Well, as usual, I'll be the contrarian.
Don't hydrate.
Just to make a point. My rule is that there are no rules.
Okay.
That it's a matter of going with the flow. It's a matter of tapping into intuition and that kind of thing. What feels right in this moment. Right. Am I ready? Am I not?
Right.
That being said, my habit, my routine for myself personally is I'm always alone. And it's always relatively high dose with eyes closed and silent darkness, and I'm crossing over, and I've got questions. I'm asking, and I'm getting answers.
Right.
That and I eat pizza afterwards. That's
right. See,
okay. That's a good rule.
Yeah, if you're gonna have a decent meal, have it after you do that.
Right.
Right. Do you always purge? I don't always, no, but sometimes you just got shit you gotta let go of, and it manifests in your body. And so I'll say sometimes too, it's not always like when we say purge, we're talking about like throwing up usually, but sometimes I sweat really hard. Like it's like all coming out of my pores and stuff. So sometimes it's that kind of thing. But yeah, if you feel the need to physically let go, find a place to do that, because it's going to be really important for your experience. Because what if you hold on to it? I mean, you're just not going to get the experience you need, because really it is your body just needs to let go. You just need to let go.
Right.
Yeah. So the purging thing brings up a story that I think you may find interesting. There's a woman that I worked with 6 or 7 years ago, and she relieved some trauma, and it happened to be sexual trauma. She went on to get a therapist degree and certificate license. And she contacted me, I don't know, year and a half ago, and said she wanted to integrate that into her therapy practice. And so I began to coach her on how to cultivate and whatnot. And she did an excellent job. Apparently she's a great mushroom mother, and, and they grew well for her. She had clients lined up on her calendar, and she decided to do a trip for herself. So she took, and she wanted me to kind of sort of be there remotely, And so she texted me. She said, "Well, I threw up. I guess I'm not going to have a trip tonight." And then,
contraire.
So she got in the bathtub. I mean, she threw up immediately, and that's what she called the biz. She was like, "I'm not going to trip." I guess it wasn't meant to be, right? So
I said that once when I took ecstasy, but I digress.
So 20 or 30 minutes later, I get a text. She's like, "I'm tripping balls." And she had decided to get in the bathtub and take a bath. And when she described to me her experience later, she said that it was anger, that the tiles in the bathroom all turned red, and the message that she got was, "Do not serve the sacraments." And and of course it took her a little while to kind of integrate what she was shown on that. But I followed up with her and asked her, I said, "What was that about? Why shouldn't you?" Right. And the answer that she gave me was, "I was told I was supposed to stay in my lane." I don't think that all therapists are qualified to work with the sacraments, but I don't think being a therapist disqualifies you necessarily.
Right.
Knowing her, I didn't see anything that would, keep her from being able to fill that role. But apparently the spirits had a different idea and said, "No, that's not for you."
Right. Well, listen to the messages that you get. Thank you for loving this show. We love you too.
She wants.
I need to get a charger
like
that
to
works.
be on Wednesday's show.
She wants to come on Wednesday's show.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
And maybe Steve can join us too. And we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me. Woo! This has been a great show. I've really enjoyed listening to you guys discuss and the experiences and the shared and the questions that are generated.
Sorry, I had to get my charger.
I'm just now discovering the question.
I could listen to you guys talk about this for more hours if we had more hours in the day. We would love to have you back in a future show to talk about mushrooms again. You guys are delightful.
Oh, well, thank you.
I've learned so much today.
Thank you.
I'm gonna watch this back a couple of times probably, so I can take notes. Right.
Definitely. I was already taking notes as we were talking.
I saw you.
Because I saw you. But yeah, I do like the different, again, different aspects of when we say medical or medicinal. Again, the heroic.
The spiritual part is medicinal.
It's still medicinal. Yeah. It's in our way, spiritually, or however people look at it differently. We all have different views. And I was actually reading an actual peer article that was talking about they actually did a whole study with people that were spiritually minded and had more of a very faith, and they agreed that it opened them up and made their spiritual experience that much more. And the people around them, they took in the data from the people that were around them and how they were affected by this, and so it was an interesting little study. So
I like that. I feel like I'm I'm the only person. The last time I did, a, no, I guess it wasn't the last time, but the last big time that I took a bigger dose, I went to Meow Wolf in Santa Fe, and I was like, I should not be in public, but it was the best experience. I was rolling around on all of this stuff, and I was touching stuff, and like I was with my best friend, and I was just like laughing. Sure there were other people there, but I didn't really care. It was it. I just I don't know. It was the
That's
best
pretty cool
experience.
though. Like Meow Wolf, the first time I've ever been to Meow Wolf, I had to go for a concert, so it was only half open. But when I went there, I completely was like in ADD overdrive. I didn't even take drugs beforehand or like trip or anything. I was just like they were
There's
completely
so much to see and
yeah,
touch,
stone cold
and
sober. And I was just like, oh God, it was so crazy.
yeah.
It,
So
it was apparent to me when I walked in. It's like these people have done mushrooms. You know?
Right.
This is where they receive their inspiration. You know.
yeah.
Right.
No, absolutely. I don't know. I think I would prefer that experience. I've done other psychedelics and other less natural psychedelics, so I just enjoyed this experience more. And I do feel like it makes me I feel like, I got a little shine on when I'm taking a regular dose. So I don't know, it's helping something.
Right.
Yeah, as it relates to the I don't know what I'll call recreational experiences. But it can enhance really whatever it is that we're doing.
Mhm.
The only downside to the recreational experience is if you haven't done the heroic dose, because it's kind of like the same thing with microdosing. And I don't know if there's
That's what I'm gonna call it from now on,
loading
the
effect
heroic
or
dose.
what's that?
That's what I'm gonna call it from now on, the heroic dose. I think that's
Right.
bigger than like a macro dose, right? That's just like
It's like the big punch you want to get.
you're going in, you're going all in.
Right. But I think what can happen is during a recreational experience, we can slip into something that we didn't intend. You know what I mean? So my perspective on, and the same thing can happen with microdosing. You hear stories about somebody who's taken a microdose before they go into their office meeting, and they're there in the conference room tripping balls. That can happen.
It can't happen.
But I think once you've done the heroic dose, the crossing over and that kind of thing, and you've seen what's there for you, then it's a lot safer to do recreationally or with your partner or whatever.
Yeah, because
Right.
you know what to expect.
Exactly.
Right.
Absolutely.
Or you've cleared whatever energy is in your body that's that's likely to come up. But the other thing I've seen too is you hear the set and setting is so important, and it is. And I think that what I've seen is if you don't have the right set and setting, some of the really tough stuff is not going to come up anyway. You know what I mean? There's some kind of a safety mechanism, either spiritually or our conscious versus unconscious mind, whatever it is, that doesn't allow this stuff to come up unless we cultivated the right setting.
Yeah, I agree.
Wow, thank you.
Jesus, we could go on for hours. We really could,
This is-
but we are going to have to wrap it up.
we do have 2 more minutes until some
we-
420.
Somebody's 420. We missed West Coast 420. Happy 420 West Coast.
420, everyone.
This show is brought to you by CQ LLC Cannabis Consulting. You can hit us up at customer service CQLLC at Gmail. 970-426-5985 is our phone number. We would love to come help you out, rehab your facility, help you build from brand new license, whatever you need. Educate your staff. That's what we're really good at. Give us a call and let us know what you need, and we'll help you out. We would like to thank our guests, Dennis, Mushroom Man Dennis, and Randall.
Thank you
For coming on today and talking to us extensively about mushrooms. This was such a great show. I think it's going to deserve a playback, everybody. So definitely save it in your browser so you can come back and listen to it again. And take a few notes, maybe.
There's a lot of good. We'll have another show.
Bring more questions.
This is great.
And if you have more questions, you can send them to us at cannabiscloset420@gmail.com. Also, come hang out with us at Discord. I forgot to do this today. Let me grab the link before we go so that if you want to come hang out with us in Discord, you guys can use this link and come chill with us. Sometimes we talk business. Sometimes we work out. Sometimes we just smoking blunts. It really depends on the mood of the day.
Coffee, yeah. So
there it is. There's that link for you. Follow us on Instagram. We're having a giveaway once we reach 1,000, which we have a ways to go. So y'all got to help us out. We're going to give this lovely creature away. Name it to claim it. It comes with a banger and a bowl. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece.
Nice.
You check out our Instagram. Follow us on there. We were going to do it on TikTok, and we apologize for not doing it on TikTok. But they don't let our videos go through, so we can't even say the C word. So, we're going to build our Instagram instead and see how that goes. Find us after the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We'll probably be there. You can find us live on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch, twitch.tv/cannabiscloset420. That's where you find us. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you so much.
As always, be nice to yourself. Remember to put your mask on first before you assist others.
Cultivate love. Yeah.
And stay lifted.
Stay lifted, everybody.
We'll see you next time.
Take
Thanks
care.
for joining us.
Thank you.